You know, I feel like I've said this probably 1,000 times, but I'll keep on saying it. Welding repairs are some of the best things that you can take on as an amateur or professional welder. The reason why? There's always something that needs to be welded, there's always something that needs to be fixed, and there's always something that's going to continuously challenge your skills because it's almost rarely ever the exact same thing. Now, it's always a great thing to have, but with that, there's some detail. There's some things that you really got to know about it. Now, I can show you weld repairs for days and days and days, but let's actually break a little bit more in depth into this one because I got a lot of people continuously asking me about weld repairs or the detail related to them. So maybe this will kind of help you guys out. What are some of those things that you need to look for? Some of those things that you need to talk about with your customer and all kinds of other stuff. Now, today, it's an intake manifold, sheet metal variety, Magnus Motorsports, and the welds are cracked. It wasn't 100 shot of nitrous that blew it up. It was actually 40 pounds of boost, and he plans on going more. So there's a lot of stuff that we got to talk about. So let's get past this intro and get working on it.
Season 5.
So where's the best place to start on a weld repair? Well, let's talk about the critical information. Who, what, where, how, why, when. All the information you can get out of it, the more the merrier, the better it's going to be. You don't want the weld repair to come back for repair again, right? You don't want your weld repair to fail or to go wrong, and if you can prevent anything else from going wrong or bad in the future, then you need to do it. So the more information you have about the part on what failed and why and all the rest of that stuff is going to help you when it comes to actually repairing it. And there's a lot of detail that goes into all of that stuff, which hopefully it's not going to be too boring and we can, you know, kind of crack into all that stuff or what it comes to when I do weld repairs. So what do we have here? This is a Magnus Motorsports Evo 4 through 9 4G63 sheet metal intake manifold. Very popular, very common. It's, you know, your average off-the-shelf bolt-on. It is mass produced, which means the quality of the welds and all the rest of that stuff is not the greatest, right? They fail. I've had to repair them in the past. It's not, you know, it's not a piece of junk or anything like that, but being mass produced, it lacks in a lot of quality, right? That's just one of the downsides to it when you have a very popular part. You get them out the door and you worry a little bit less about, you know, what goes wrong with them. So on a lot of these, there's a lot of cold welds. There's a lot of areas like, you know, craters, there's, you know, fish eyes, there's inconsistencies, there's cold spots, there's, you know, lots of stuff that, you know, is going to basically create a problem. So what you really want to do is assess this. What happened? How did it actually happen? In this case, 40 psi of boost. Likely a little bit more than this manifold's recommended for. I know in the past people have shot them with all kinds of boost and made tons of power numbers and all the rest of that stuff, but in this case, it blew 40 psi of boost. That's most likely the cause there. Blew the welds on the intake. Cue the Fast and Furious jokes. Anyway, we got to make sure that our weld or our repair is going to withstand or hold that 40 pounds of boost. But in there is a cautionary memo, right? If we make a weld repair that's not going to blow at 40 psi of boost, we do that good quality control stuff and we make sure that it lays down right. The rest of the welds or everything that we haven't repaired is likely going to fail as well. So your customer needs to know about stuff like that. If what you're doing is going to fix it or whatever the case is, then, you know, make sure that they're aware that the rest of it, what you didn't touch or, you know, any other spot could be a problematic area in the future. Now, he's been made aware of that, and we're just going to make this thing pass so that way he can get it on the dyno, get it all tuned up and all the rest of that stuff. Now, the second thing that we got to pay attention to on this one is the actual weld itself, based on, you know, what is going on here. This intake manifold is polished. I do not offer polishing services, but if you do, cool, that's awesome. But when we lay down this weld for repair, it's going to show that etching line. I'm going to try and make it as, you know, light as possible and all the rest of that, but it's not going to be a polished weld afterwards. It might be shiny and all that, but we're still going to have that white etching line that's very, you know, common in aluminum, and I have to grind all of this weld down. I'm not going to lay some dookie right over the top of it and just hope that it's going to stick together. I'm actually going to get rid of it, refinish the surfaces real quick, and prep them for proper weld repair. I need to squeeze it back together. I need to lay down a really nice, hardcore, strong weld that is ahead of this crack on both sides. So there's going to be grinding marks. There's going to be a white etching line on that reveal, and I don't offer polishing services. So if it's something that he wants in the future to have a polished, you know, intake manifold again, he's going to have to send it out for polishing. Now, if you do polishing, that's something you're going to have to note on this one. the regular condition of this manifold, right? It's got its, general scratches and all kinds of other stuff on there. It's, it's been used, right? So if you're going to offer a polishing service on it, you're probably going to have to bill out the job for the entire manifold to be polished up. Because if you just polish this one area, it's still not going to match. So that's something you need to note on that one. And finally, the weld quality. Now this is not being cocky or anything like that. This is just knowing my current skill level. I can weld better than this. I don't have these kind of inconsistencies when I do this. And that may be a problem for some people. It's knowing your level and being able to tell them, hey, look, what I put down is not really going to match. Even if yours is of less quality or less aesthetic appeal than what's on there, you got to let them know either way. But in my case, I know I can weld a lot better or a lot more uniform than this one. Now, it is rare that you find somebody who actually cares about that, but in some instances, I've encountered that I've had to actually lay down a weld that didn't look like mine, the one that actually matched somebody else's weld. I've done that in the past. It kind of sucks, but at least I know that the quality weld that I laid down is of higher quality than what's on there, but the trick about it, or whatever the case is, to make it match. Now, this is a bit of a me thing. I'm kind of OCD or like super anal about this, but the direction of the welds, you can tell that this one was welded from my right to my left, which in your case is your left to right. I know that because of the shape or the direction that the actual bead lays down on. So I know that when I actually go to weld this one up, I'm going to have to position it a certain way, and it might be a little awkward, might be a little complicated to run that, but I'm going to make sure that since I don't need to knock out this entire plenum here, I'm going to start it from where the weld repair is and then move it down that way, but it's going to go in the same direction. That's a big one. The final thing that I let my customer know about before I actually took this on and he walked away or drove off or whatever the case is I'm going to find something else possibly that is wrong with this. If this weld failed here, it's probably going to have other ones that are cracked or on their way to out the door, on their way to failure already. So once we get this all cleaned up, I'm going to give it a good solid once over and a very thorough inspection to make sure that there's nothing else that has failed or anything like that. We want to make sure that whatever we get out the door, whatever the case is of our best work. So we're going to take that time and double check everything, and sometimes the customer wants to be notified, sometimes they want pictures and stuff like that. No problem. In this case, he says, I don't care, just fix it, just make it work, let me know how much it costs. He's one of those guys that you always really want to have around, or of your best customers. So once we get this all cleaned up and prepped and ready to weld, we're going to check out every other weld on this one and see if we can find any other issues. Now, I feel like I've been talking forever, so let's just get on it.
In all the years I've been doing this, I've learned one very important fact. It does not matter how clean you keep your engine, nothing is ever really that clean. So preparation is key to ensuring that we have a nice clean weld, because we can't weld through stuff like dirt and oils and anything like that. We want a nice clean surface in which to weld with, and we have to make sure it gets extremely clean so we can inspect it thoroughly and make sure that all of the other welds and everything else is good. So that's why I'm getting really down and dirty into this, to make sure that everything is nice and clean. So very important. Now this area right here, I noticed that it had a bit of a spray pattern that was kind of coming out, almost looking like there was another cracked weld in there, but where it actually comes out and how it looks, I couldn't find any real evidence of a cracked weld or an area that was split or anything like that, but something like that is a pretty good telltale sign. I'm also going to check out the actual flange surface for the gasket, or the gasket surface on the flange. It's really important that you take a look at this and see if there's anything that shows that it was blown out or leaking or anything like that. It's just a little courtesy to your customer. Let them know this is what you found, this is what you spotted, and of course, it comes back all nice and cleaned up. It's a good thing. So make sure that's all nice and clean and ready to roll as well. Once we're all nice and clean, we're going to set it up for grinding, and this is going to involve tape. Well, the masking tape here is actually used as a protective surface, if you will. Now, sometimes when you're grinding in tight spaces and stuff like that, maybe the grinder jumps on you or it gets caught up somewhere or anything like that, and it's going to nick or ding the part. If you stack up a few layers of masking tape, it'll give you that last minute, oh crap, you got to pull away and hopefully you didn't ding or nick the part. That's what the tape is there for. Use it like you don't pay for it. That's the trick. Now, I'm also going to tape off the flange surface, and I'm going to tape off the throttle body. I don't want any dust or anything else like that getting in there, so we're just going to seal that off. Also, to prevent some grinding dust from accessing these areas, I'm going to tape off the electronics too. Now, the grinding will be done in stages. We're going to start with a 60 grit flap disc. This is one of my favorite types and sizes to use, and of course there's a link in the description down below for our preferred tools, or the stuff that we like the most. But here's the number one rule: let the flap disc do the work, not your muscles. Go nice and easy. Take your dear sweet time. We're just knocking the weld down. We don't want to take too much away or really anything away from the edge or what exists already on that sheet metal. We don't want it to get any thinner because it's going to make it more difficult for us to run. So we're just taking the weld down and getting a nice new surface to work with. And take a look at that tape while we're here. See how useful that's become? I've already dinged that runner a few times, but it's not going through because the tape is on there. Next, I'm going to switch it off to a fine wheel, very fine wheel. This is like a surface prep pad flap disc. I love these things. Now, this is just to get rid of the grinding marks themselves. It's about the finest finish that I'm going to put on this in case he wants to go back and polish it up later or something like that. It won't have deep grinding marks in it. This is just there to knock those down. It's not really going to take a lot of metal away or anything, but it will give a much finer, nicer finish to the areas that are around that we ground down. I just want to get rid of any grinding marks, and that's what it does extremely well. So with all the grinding complete, we'll just take the tape off of here, double check, look, we didn't actually ding up our runners, which is amazing. Cool. So with it out of the way, we'll get the tape out, we'll give it another final wipe down with acetone, and we're ready to weld it.
Okay, so I haven't welded aluminum in like a week, and I got to make sure that I got some practice in before I go after that one, because I really want to make sure that this weld comes out perfect. Now, I rarely ever run into a job cold, right? I got to have some practice. The other thing, I got to switch out my torch setup here. Currently, I've got the CK Worldwide gas saver set up, which this is really gnarly, and I love using it, but for aluminum, it does work, but I want a really tight etching line or an etching zone on the around the bead itself. So I'm going to go with my preferred setup here, or my typical setup, which is a number 5 cup on standard consumables. That's like my aluminum go-to. It's really great for that. Fits in a lot of tight areas and all kinds of other stuff. I shouldn't have an issue with anything. So we get this switched over, and for practice, usually you grab some scraps or whatever you have laying around, but this case, I got hooked up here with a pack of Weld Metals Online, pre-cut, pre-fabbed, presentable weld metal for practice. This is a pack of 10 coupons. It's on the aluminum 4-inch long. They have it 4-inch and 8-inch, and this is 1/8-inch thick. That's what I'm going to use to do some outside corner practice on, because that's an outside corner. So it's really cool to have a pack of aluminum coupons already preset, pre-cut, prepped, and ready to roll, just chilling in the toolbox. And these things are cheap. So they've got them in all different sizes, thicknesses, and your primary types of weld metal, plus really cool weld puzzle kits. So check them out, weldmetalsonline.com. I'm going to get to some practice here before we go attacking that one.
It's really convenient to have something like this just laying around. I mean, that way I don't have to run off to the saw or anything like that. You just take it out of the bag and go for it. And for stuff like this, when I do any kind of weld, if I haven't welded it in a while, or I just need, with some quick practice or whatever the case is, I mean, this is fantastic. This is what I do. Always, mimic the same joint that you're working on or whatever the case is. And of course, the first one that I laid down wasn't the prettiest. I was a little bit shaky, a little inconsistent. The second one came out a little bit better, but let's go for like round 3 here. I really want to make sure that everything comes out just right, that I got it under full control. I'm back to being comfortable. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So by the third round here, I got myself back into comfortable mode, feel like I could do everything. So with it all finished up here, let's check it out and get working.
I can live with that. I feel pretty good. Now, I definitely want to get myself in a comfortable position here, so I'm just going to kind of fiddle with this for a moment. Take a couple of blocks over here so I can prop this up a little bit. I think what I want to do is get it completely leveled and stabled to a point where it's definitely not going to fall over on me. I certainly don't want that. But you get something to prop on, something to rest my hands on a little bit here, so that way I know I can make it in a good full swing. Now, I know I've got really good line of sight on this part if I'm coming up this way and I'm not getting all crumbled and jumbled up here and cramped up or whatever. And this feels like a pretty good height that I could safely run this one. Now I'm going to run out of block here, so I'll eventually have to do some sort of a restart on it. But the least amount of restarts or whatever, and the most continuous smooth motion I have here, the better. Now I got the machine set up to I believe 100 amps right now. This is relatively thin stuff. I don't believe it's any more than about maybe 70, 80 thou or so. I can't really measure it, but that's about what it looks like. So I don't need much more than about 100 amps to run this one. I'm going to get my comfortable settings on this one, which is 110 amps or 110 hertz, which is where I normally run most of my aluminum repairs at. I don't think I need to go into like super high freak or anything like that. So just a nice, smooth, continuous bead as far as I can go on this one. Just really paying attention to the general, you know, what it needs to look like and all the rest of that good stuff. So here we go. See if I can get comfortable on this one. Maybe I'll have to flex the head a little bit here or something. Yeah, already we got some floaters and some junk coming up into here. I'm gonna hit it with the Purge. That's kind of nasty.
Now, aluminum is not a reactive metal, meaning that we don't normally have to purge it. But things that are like tanks, for example, fuel cells, even this intake manifold here, any place where their atmospheric gases can contact the backside of the weld, such as on an outside corner with bad fit up or a broken weld in this case, it's kind of helpful to have a little bit of argon on the backside of that weld. Otherwise, it's going to deform from the inside out. It kind of bubbles up on you, or it actually like almost like grows from the inside out with this weird like film over the top of it. If you've ever experienced it, it's usually a gas coverage issue. You either don't have enough on the outside or bad positioning or something like that where it just kind of, you know, blows itself out, or from the inside it can contact the aluminum and kind of make it work not in your favor. But it's not reactive like stainless, so purging is not mandatory. In this case, it definitely doesn't hurt. So as soon as I have it purged out, we let the argon pump in there for a few minutes, and then I turn it down to about 10 CFH to keep it nice and steady flowing in there. I definitely don't want it to blow the back of the weld out, but doing that little bit there actually really helped it out.
Yeah, that's already a little bit cleaner. Still wanting to get wide open on me, but that's all right. Really take care of it with the pedal here. And if it does start to run away, I'll just get out of it. Top of my torch here is getting caught up on the top of the manifold around that fuel rail port, so I had to get out of it because I was trying to be a hero for a minute. Let's see if I can get around it now. I just want to keep this nice and tight. And if any kind of junk wants to push itself up to the top of it, I'm going to let it push, let it do its thing. There's a lot of porosity in here. I'm really having to play with this and work it with my foot, just tweaking the amperage around a little bit, because it's acting pretty wild right now. It just blew on me. Yeah, I'm going to have to kind of work around this real quick. Butter it up a little bit. Yeah, that was kind of nasty. Well, it looks like the last guy who did this, maybe he did like a tip and dip or something on the end of there, or turned his tungsten into a Q-tip on that one, because as soon as I started welding into it, just a bunch of junk just started coming out of there. So it could have been that. It could have been like some compound that was like from buffing compound, could have still been left in there. But yeah, that was junky. So unfortunately, this doesn't turn out like the most gorgeous in the world, but oh well.
Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a nice arc shot of doing this little repair here, but it did split on me as I was starting to weld it, so I did back up and start from another point. It's not shown in the video, but yeah, either way, I mean, it welds. I tried to blend it as best as I could, but, you know, turns out how it turns out.
There was some junk in that one, too. Oh, well. I mean, it's fixed. Kill this argon line real quick. So hopefully that helps you guys out just a little bit on the insights or the details regarding welding repairs. Now, I mean, this is actually pretty typical. I wish the welds looked a little bit better, a little more presentable, but there was nothing I could do about all the trash that was floating up in there. I mean, we cleaned it out, but you know, that's about as good as it gets. But I'm confident it will still hold. It's just, you know, after a polish and everything like that, all of that will go away. They don't necessarily match, but they're pretty close. You know, I kept the bead profile the same size. Obviously, this big giant weld on the runner here, you know, that was, there's no way to make that match like perfectly or whatever the case is, but definitely it's not going to leak anymore. There's no more crack there. But either way, hopefully this kind of helps you out, gives you a little bit of an idea of the things that you should be talking about or should be asking your customer, and of course the things that you really need to pay attention to when it comes to making a weld repair, so that way it doesn't fail in the future. So if we have an opportunity to build a brand new sheet metal intake manifold for my customer, I will definitely do my best to get that on video. Hopefully it'll work out and we have some really awesome content for you guys in the future. But for right now, I want to thank you guys for watching as always. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check us out on the fabricationseries.com website. If you need to ask a question or anything like that, you can always email me. You can also hit us up on Instagram at the.fabricator, facebook.com/thefabricatorseries, and special thanks to weldmetalsonline.com for dropping some of those awesome coupons out there. You definitely got to check their stuff out. I'm going to be doing some stuff with them in the future. So either way, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks again. We'll see you guys on the next episode.